whenever I see a really great image, I think, whoa, there's something to aspire to. And there are some people out there that really do inspire, and they keep you focused and motivated to make your photography even better.
Hello, photography lovers. How is it going? Thank you so much, everyone who subscribed to the show in the last 2 weeks. So happy to see the Photography Radio growing every single week. Today, I have another fascinating conversation for you. I talked to a British travel and landscape photographer, Trevor Cole. Trevor publishes images in magazines, calendars and cards. In December 2011, he presented to the Royal Geographic Society. He has also exhibited in Ethiopia, in Switzerland and Ireland. He reached the final of the Travel Photographer of the Year in 2010, 11, 13 and 15, and was also a finalist in the Wanderlust magazine Travel Photographer of the Year in 2013. Without any further ado, here is my conversation with Trevor Cole.
Can you imagine your life without photography? No? Then you will love this show. And it doesn't matter if you're a DSLR, a mirrorless, or a mobile phone shooter. We're here to help your photography grow. This is Photography Radio.
Hello, Trevor. I'm so happy to have you here on Photography Radio today. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, and very nice to meet you too, Tomash.
The first question I often ask my guests is very simple. How do you stay inspired? What's the number one thing that makes you go out there and photograph?
That's a really good question. For many years of my life, I taught geography in international schools overseas. So for me, photography was always a part of that. So all my photography stems from geography and travel. So whenever you see new things, you have new eyes, and then therefore the photography becomes much more meaningful. So I guess travel is my main stimulus.
Okay, and you are traveling all over the world. I have seen so many amazing images in your portfolio of people and landscapes, of different cultures and of those people in their environment. So what is it that fascinates you about those people? Are there any answers you are trying to get, through your photography when photographing them?
Well, I've always had an interest in indigenous people, those that have been in situ on the spot for a very long period of time, i.e. the tribes of southwest Ethiopia. And I've just come back from a trip to Papua New Guinea, where I went to the Highland Show. I guess it's the way they live and the way they still connect to nature, something that's been lost largely in our more developed world. It just fascinates me how these cultures, they're very similar in many ways, and yet they're very different. But the way they interact with the earth, the sky above, the elements, and manage to look after the environment. And there's always been a little bit of the environmentalist in me, the geographer. I lived in West Africa for a year teaching, and I lived for 4 years in Ethiopia. So I'm particularly familiar with southern Ethiopia. So I try to return there and take little photo tours there once a year or once every 18 months. I have a real soft spot for Ethiopia in particular.
But you also photograph different locations all around the world, right?
Oh, yes, I do. I mean, I love to go to Namibia. I also love landscapes. I mean, that's the other part of my geography, really, is just being somewhere which is so incredibly beautiful. Iceland, or where I live here, my own country of Ireland, is stunningly beautiful. The perfect place for photographers to capture light and landscape.
Yeah, let's talk about landscape a little bit more later on the show here. Let's get back to people, because it's really like fascinating for me, especially that you travel, to and visit those different locations. Is there one thing you would say that kind of stays the same when it comes to people standing in front of your camera? Like, do you experience similar emotions or reactions when photographing them?
Actually, no. I mean, in for example, I've only been to Papua New Guinea once, and it's fresh in my mind. The people there just loved having their photograph taken. They were very receptive. But some other parts of the world, I've traveled to Somaliland and I've traveled to eastern Ethiopia, where cultural differences make it a lot more difficult to take photographs. A lot more challenging due to either religious belief or a certain shyness towards being photographed. So sometimes you have to just look and not photograph. Mm-hmm. But what I really think is important is spending time with people and not just going in, taking your shot and leaving. You have to know people. You have to feel something. And even those that are difficult to photograph culturally, if you spend time with them, you often get that little chance that maybe others don't get. And the shot then becomes a possibility.
But this first step of knowing those people better, is this not a barrier which is also very difficult to cross? I mean, you have to kind of enter private sphere of someone or maybe a family. How do you start such process with people, from different cultures or of different languages and so on?
Well, I always take a local guide. I always use local enterprise, people who know the people. And that is my way in. Find a good guide opens doors that otherwise you would find closed in your face. Some places you just cannot go alone. You wouldn't get the photographs you want to get. So someone who can translate, who can sit around with you and you can ask questions using their skills as an interpreter. And that makes a lot of difference. So that first step becomes easier.
Okay, so it's then in a way easier with the local guide to develop the trust between yourself and those people.
Yes.
Are there still locations or like areas, where, because I understand those people are kind of already aware, they know what photography is, what cameras are and so on. But did you ever visit a location, or an area where photography and camera equipment was something completely new to those people still, or it rather doesn't happen anymore?
There are some areas you have to really go off the beaten track now. Most people will know what a camera is and they're very aware of being photographed. But if you go to remote areas of, say, Ethiopia, or even remote areas of northern Namibia, and there are some areas of the world that I haven't actually managed to quite get to yet, where I know they're still not used to being photographed. And occasionally you come across a village where the little kids haven't seen a camera before, and then they run away in terror, at the sight of this man with a great big lens and a camera. But in general, most people know. But in some cases, there are places which are still truly off the beaten track.
Are you trying then, with the help of your guide, to explain them what it is, what's the purpose of your travel?
Oh yes, I mean, it is amazing. Most people, even if they're in a village that hasn't seen a group of tourists or photographers before, they themselves often will now go to a local market. So they do see people outside the context of their village, and trucks bringing goods in, telecommunications, all of these things are changing the way these people live, and some of it's not very good.
And do you try delivering the prints of images in some, or images in some other way to those people you photograph?
Yes. When I'm on a photo tour, and if we go back to the same village, sometimes we take back images printed from the year before, or even showing them an image on the iPhone that was taken before, or on a device, which usually brings big smiles.
Yeah, and also imagine, I assume you are shooting digitally these days, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you can also show them the image immediately on the LCD screen. Must be also quite an experience for them.
It is, although if you're in a group and you get...
Yeah, sure. Then it gets more difficult.
One person showing the image, and then the next person's photograph is ruined because they haven't done that. The kids or the people get so excited. So I try to say, show the photos at the end.
What do you think creates a good portrait?
Wow. This is a question I'm often asked, and it's, to me, I always look, first of all, for characters, people who are interesting. It could be old people, it could be young people that have pride in their culture, it could be beauty. But I think what makes the portrait is whenever you see it afterwards and you know that person whose photograph you've taken has actually made a connection with you. It's not just a point, press, disappear. It's stay there, interact, talk, make a joke, have a smile. Even if the language is a barrier, you can certainly be interactive. And when you're interactive, I think you get more emotional moments.
And you also are you a supporter of this idea? Then such image will be also stronger when the viewers are actually looking at it. Do you think those emotions carries on with the image?
I think emotions do come across in the image, and that's what I don't always achieve it, but it's what I'm trying to achieve, is some sort of connection that is seen in the photograph whenever you look at the photograph afterwards, that makes a person say, wow, you must have connected with this human being. And, you can actually feel it, especially the eyes. The eyes make a lot of difference in a photograph.
So I was about to ask you, so probably to have the strongest possible impact, you have to actually have the eye contact, right, between your subject and the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes I like shooting people whenever they're looking somewhere else, so they're looking, into space or at another photographer. But I think there has to be a point where you connect eye to eye, lens to eye.
How about a landscape? And what creates a good landscape photograph? Because we don't have this human element there, right? So What would be those, let's say, two aspects or two elements of a good landscape photograph for you?
Well, I think landscape photography is actually in many ways more challenging than portrait photography, although some people would argue the opposite, because I find myself quite comfortable with people. Landscapes, you have time. So you have to think very carefully about composition. You have to think about your foreground. And I always ask myself, does the foreground connect in some way with the background? Are there leading lines? Are there subjects or physical features in the foreground which make it interesting up close as well as in the distance? Light is just so important. And the light at the beginning and the end of the day, the golden hours, are unquestionably the best time to shoot. But it's all about composition and maybe a bit of luck in getting the right cloud form and right light on the hills, the right shadow.
And I have seen in your portfolio, actually, you are combining those two types of photography very often. It means, I mean, you're putting people into landscape, into their environment, right? Probably, I can imagine this is kind of what fascinates you the most, right?
Well, as a geographer, I think, it's the way in which people interact with landscapes that determines the nature of life on this earth. So geography is all about change through space and time, and people have always been a part of landscapes, and cultures reflect landscape types. I never forget going, from the highlands of Ethiopia to the tribal areas. And as soon as the nature of the terrain differs and it becomes more arduous to live, you find different types of people living in these more challenging, marginal environments. So, yes, landscape and people go hand in hand.
You mentioned before there are still some locations and places you would like to visit. What is like on top of your bucket list at the moment?
Yeah, I really do have a weakness for, landscapes. I'd love to go to the Lofoten Islands in Norway. I haven't actually been there. I would love to go to a place called Kamchatka, which is in eastern Russia, but it's very tough to get there. As far as indigenous people or people photography is concerned, I'd like to go to West Papua, which is the easternmost part of Indonesia. Very diverse cultural groups. I'd also like to go back to northern Namibia and into southern Angola. It's now an area where you can go and photograph tribes that as yet haven't really been used to photographers going in. South Sudan is also on the list, but it's impossible at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, it seems you have some scheduling to do, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But you are traveling with groups, right? You are running also workshops, right?
Yes, I run workshops, take little photo tours. We take photo tours here in Donegal for people coming from wherever, Australia, Austria, the United States.
Mm-hmm. Is it the main way you travel actually with groups, with workshops, or you're also going on your own from time to time?
I do both. I actually love going on my own. I went with a friend last year to Cuba. He was a videographer, did a bit of video, and I took photographs. And we just did it all ourselves. And I still love that challenge of just being the traveler, getting out there.
How about when it comes to actual photographs? Do you observe, I mean, for sure you do, like kind of different dynamics and also, being in a different zone when creating your photographs. Do you teaching is one thing and it's great, but producing your own photographs, do you realize that you are producing better photographs when being alone by yourself, or doesn't it really matter, in comparison when being with a group?
That's a really good question, actually. When you're with a group, you have to really think about what the group wants and sometimes create the best angle. You spot the moment for them. And that often means it's a very good photograph for you as well. Mm-hmm. So I find myself when I'm on my own doing the same sort of thing, looking at situations. But this is purely being selfish when you're on your own because you have a chance to shoot it just you and no one else will have the shot. So there are advantages in both. I guess being on your own gives you that sense of, well, this is truly mine and no one else is really seeing it. And you can put your magical little stamp on it. But even when you're with a group, you get 10 photographers in a group, and they'll all shoot in different ways. They'll all look for different things. I will tell them what I like doing and how I do it. But at the end of the day, it's a very subjective art form, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I experience the same. Sometimes I'm traveling with groups, and the same small subject, but then we are looking at each other's images, and there are just 10 different photographs, right? So this is just crazy. It's amazing.
Absolutely. But that's one of the joys. Now we say, okay, I might not like that, but I appreciate what you've done. And then someone will produce something, and I think, wow, I wish I'd thought of that.
Right. What camera are you using these days for your travel photography?
I have two at the moment. I have a Nikon D810 and a Nikon D750 with 4 or 5 very good lenses. I'm very tempted by the new Nikon D850, but that's a little bit of an investment.
So has it been a Nikon all those years, or you tried different brands of cameras?
I've used Nikon now for a long time. I used to take slides when I traveled, and I had very good Nikons. And before that, I had a Minolta, and I think my very first camera was a Rolleiflex, quite an unusual camera for an SLR. But now I use Nikon, and it's too expensive to think about changing.
So what would you say makes you stick to Nikon as a brand, or what made you stick to it, and start investing into the system? Is there something special about the system which is so important for you?
Well, I mean, if I had to criticize it, I would say it's quite a heavy system, but it's very resilient. It travels well. And their lenses, especially the faster lenses, take superbly sharp images, and that's what I love. The sensor's very good. It isn't. They've never let me down.
Wonderful, Trevor. Just quickly about 500px. I discovered actually your work on 500px.com on the platform. Do you remember when it was that you discovered 500px? How did you get on this platform, and what is it about it that you are enjoying?
Well, 500px. I mean, I put my photographs up in a number of if you like, sites, and 500px was the first one. And I guess I quite enjoyed the fact that when you put your photograph out there, it's seen by others, and after a while, it becomes a little bit competitive. The thing is, to do well in 500px, you really have to have a large number of followers. So to use 500px effectively, you have to commit to it. You have to stay with it for a few years, and then people slowly see your images appearing, and you become better known, and therefore you get a larger number of visual likes.
Yeah, there is quite a number of great photographers on 500px, right? So do you also feel it? Even this, being there with your photographs and, having the account, even this fact kind of, pushes you in terms of creativity and, going for new images, just does it kind of push your creativity in a way? This is a funny thing because it's just a platform where you show images, but it's also a community, right?
It is a community, and yes, it's a platform where you show images. But absolutely, I always say to my photographer friends or people that are out in a course, if I'm not learning something or not getting inspiration from others, then I'm not really enjoying my photography. Whenever I see a really great image, I think, whoa, there's something to aspire to. And there are some people out there that really do inspire, and they keep you focused and motivated to make your photography even better.
Wonderful, Trevor. Last thing, this is something special. This is an audio podcast, right? But I have like an exercise I try with my guests. I'm just looking at a photograph. You uploaded it to 500px, I guess, 2 days ago, and it's called Ari Girl Jinka. I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I know.
And so I want to ask you, and could you imagine you are talking to somebody and just talking about this photograph, like talking to our listeners right now. Could you just, describe the photograph and kind of tell our listeners because it's an amazing shot, absolutely stunning. So what was the situation, and just tell us about the photo that we can start imagining it in our heads.
Well, it was a photo tour to southern Ethiopia, and we went around to a variety of the tribes. Now, the Ari tribe are, relatively speaking, quite westernized. And I just love to walk around a village and look for opportunity. And this little girl was sitting in a doorway. And in a way, it's my ideal type of portrait shot, because her face is standing apart from the darker background. So I use a technique called spot metering to meter on the face, which casts the background into darkness and therefore provides a great contrast. And that if you look through any of my photographs, I do try when I can to get subjects in a place or position which enables me to take an interesting shot. But she just had a really interesting little face, and she just sat there, and it was almost a candid moment. She didn't really change her expression very much while being photographed. She was, of course, aware that she was being photographed, but she just sat there and took it in her stride.
So how much time did you spend with her, would you say?
Well, I think we there was a group of us. We spent maybe an hour in that area just taking photographs and connecting with people and saying hello and putting the camera down and talking to them or.
And you took a few shots of her as one of them, or you just took this one shot?
No, I never take one shot. One tiny little bit of movement, and I want those eyes, or at least one of those eyes, super sharp. So I think take a few to make sure.
Right. I think I can even see you in her eyes, the reflection of yourself. Right. I think it's
maybe that's when I know it's a sharp shot.
Yeah, exactly. No, but a really compliment. I mean, this is the best, shot portrait I for my standards, because basically, I mean, it's amazing. It's like I am looking at it just at the monitor, right? But I have the feeling that I am basically standing in front of this girl live, So this is just wonderful. Congratulations here.
Oh, thank you. That's nice of you.
Yeah. Trevor, thanks so much for getting here and finding this. What was it? I don't know, even 25 minutes with us, with our listeners. Your next destination, what are the plans for the next weeks?
Well, I have a photo tour coming here at the end of September. And at the moment, we're just planning our photo tours for 2018. So Romania, hopefully sometime in the new year. I'm hoping to go to the tribes of eastern India later next year, Ethiopia, and we'll see what else materializes. Iceland, possibly. So we'll see. But there's always lots to dream about, and always somewhere out there that deserves a bit of attention from the photographer.
Yeah, wonderful. Hopefully you can cross something out from your bucket list next year, right?
Well, I crossed a couple this year. There's a couple of places. I try and go somewhere new each year just to revitalize the senses.
Nice. Wonderful. Trevor, have safe, great travels, wonderful light wherever you go. And take good care. Thanks so much for today.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. It was a pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone. Let your photography friends know about Photography Radio, and if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the podcast. Head over to photographyradio.com to find out how to do it. My name is Tomasz, and I will talk to you